Welcome to Pat's Cast. I'm Brad Whitaker. The latest head coaching hires in the NFL tells an interesting direction of where NFL owners would like to take the league. And it is an interesting trend that I think is going to backfire big time, but I'll get to that in just a moment. But I want to go through a list of some of the hires that have been picked up just this offseason. And we'll start with the Atlanta Falcons. They hired Raheem Morris. The Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales. LA Chargers, Jim Harbaugh. Las Vegas Raiders, Antonio Pierce. New England Patriots, obviously Gerard Mayo. Tennessee Titans hired Brian Callahan as their next head coach. Mike McDonald is going to the Seattle Seahawks. And the Washington Commanders most recently hired Dan Quinn. Now, a good portion of this list, some, most, but not all, consists of young, player-friendly coaches, right? You have the guy Antonio Pierce, Josh McDaniels was too tough in the locker room, and the Raiders players were not happy, and, they basically staged a mutiny, and next thing you know, Antonio Pierce is there, and he's firing up the team, and owners all around the league are listening to that, and they're going, oh, we need coaches who are player-friendly, that are young and charismatic and connect with the coaches. And look, there's certainly an argument for that, right? Like, watching the New England Patriots these last few years, we have had a bit of a tone-deaf head coach, right? Like, he's the greatest coach of all time, but, there are some issues with Belichick being a communicator and with our younger generations that, don't take constructive criticism as well as previous generations, certainly. There is certainly an argument that coaches need to be a little softer when it comes to approaching the players. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of people on this list. I mean, even Jim Harbaugh, who can be tough, certainly, he's still a guy that connects with the players and everything. And maybe Raheem Morris might be a little tougher than some of these other guys, Dan Quinn as well. But for the most part, Canales, Callahan, McDonald, like, these are guys that, and even Gerard Mayo, that are here to kind of soften the environment in the locker room, right? To make it a little bit easier on the players so they don't feel the pressure as much, and that in turn will help them succeed a little bit more. And look, there's a balance for all these things. But what ended up happening because of this is Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, was rejected by the Atlanta Falcons to become their next head coach. An offense that, they still need a quarterback, but an offense in which they have all their receivers built out. Bill Belichick's greatest weakness, he wouldn't even have to approach it. He's still great at drafting defenses. He would have gone into that organization on day one and turned it around, particularly in the NFC South. And instead, look, they went with Raheem Morris. There's an argument that Morris deserved the job, certainly, but Morris has a losing record as a head coach, and he won out against the greatest coach of all time. And Belichick, I guess there were some conversations about maybe Washington, but it never really got anywhere. And ultimately, he's going to enter the 2024 season unemployed. We'll see. I guess he still wants to coach, but we'll see what happens there. One of the latest firings, Eric Bieniemy, a guy who I was arguing the Patriots should have considered for the new head coaching role, who has led the Kansas City offense under Mahomes up until this season. He finds himself now out of a job as he was fired he was fired for the offensive coordinator role with Washington Commanders, bringing in Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn decided to bring in the younger, more charismatic Cliff Kingsbury instead of going with arguably the best offensive coordinator of the last 5 or 6 seasons, right? So Eric Bieniemy, who probably should have a head coaching job at this point, however, is known as a tough coach, a guy who's very strict when it comes to coaching his players. He finds himself out of a job heading into the 2024 season. Maybe he'll pick up an assistant role somewhere else or something to buy time until next year, and maybe he'll get a shot at a head coaching job or another OC role. But Eric Bieniemy, the guy who I wanted to be the New England Patriots' next head coach, is now unemployed. But I think this story that came out from Diana Rossini of The Athletic, she basically covers Tennessee football, the Titans, and she wrote an interesting paragraph here about Mike Vrabel and why he wasn't hired, considering Vrabel is one of the best young coaches, but he is also considered a guy who is tough on his players. She said this about Mike Vrabel. I don't think there was a fit for him. I don't think he sat in front of any owner who thought that his style was going to work for what they were looking for. I had a GM at the Senior Bowl who mentioned to me Vrabel's physical build, that he's a very large human being and can be very intimidating to people in an organization that are going to be part of these decisions. And that is a factor. Look, the league has gone soft, clearly. All right? This is football. And because Mike Vrabel is a large human being, which many NFL coaches are because they played football before, he's not going to get a shot at a head coaching job in 2024. I don't think this is going to last because statistically, some of these coaches are going to fail. All right? Some of these coaches will fail after 1, maybe 2 seasons with losing records. And suddenly, this copycat league, which is trending toward bringing in these young, charismatic, connect with the players type coaches, is going to go the other direction, right? We're going to see cultures fall apart in some of these locker rooms. We're going to see teams that are not prepared going into Sunday because football is a sport where you have to be tough on your players relative to the NBA, where you have an 82-game season and you sit your star players for 10 to 15% of those games. Or Major League Baseball, where you play 162 games and really no one game means all that much. It's about putting in a good totality of a long season so that you can succeed and make real decisions and burn arms in the postseason and really go through your bullpen and put starting pitchers out there in the 8th inning. Football's different. You only have 16 games. You have a week to prepare. Really, you only get to practice 3 or 4 days out of that week. And you have to have your players prepared. And look, it's worked in some teams. We see Kyle Shanahan. They're in the Super Bowl right now. Andy Reid, he can be tough, I think, but he's not exactly a fist-pounding type guy. And I think a lot of people very much admire Sean McVay and the camp counselor vibes that he gives off, and it seems to be working well in LA. But there are multiple ways to do this, right? Just in the same way, there are multiple ways to approach the quarterback position. We've seen teams win Super Bowls with pocket passers. We've seen teams win with dual threat, more dynamic quarterbacks. There are teams that are going to win with guys like Sean McVay. We've seen them win a Super Bowl before. But that is not a one-size-fits-all solution. But because NFL owners are approaching it that way, you're seeing guys like Belichick, Vrabel, and Bieniemy, who should be literally the top 3 candidates in head coaching searches across the league, not have jobs. And that is insane, in my opinion. But again, I think this is going to backfire big time. A lot of these teams are not going to succeed, and you're going to see the owners in the same way that you see in politics when people elect a president, then they're not happy after 4 years, and they select the polar opposite president the next 4 years. You're going to see them go back to more aggressive, more tough head coaches, and guys like Belichick, Vrabel, and Bieniemy will all get jobs. And by 2026, I'm calling it now, the NFL will be nothing but drill sergeants, okay? This is all going to backfire. It's going to be pretty funny to watch. Some of these coaches will succeed. I think Gerard Mayo certainly earned the role in New England. I think the Patriots probably are a team that should approach it this way, perhaps, because of the way it has worked out with Belichick in the last few years. But his approach has been outdated more, in my opinion, in terms of player personnel, not necessarily coaching. But will be interesting to see how it plays out. Again, drill sergeants 2026. The NFL is going to be tough again. The pads are going to get 6 inches higher. All right, that's it for this episode of Pat's Cast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to this video and to this channel, and to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, and we'll be back tomorrow.